Zelman, another exciting person to interview today. We have Adrian Pozzo from Cbus Property, and Adrian has been with Cbus for a very long time, 17 years. He's also been the CEO for 13 years, which is surprising these days. You know, you don't typically see CEOs stay in that position for such a prolonged period, and also CEO of such a high-performing company. You know, I think that's the other thing that Cbus Property has gone from strength to strength over the past couple of decades. I've known Adrian for quite some time. First met him when I was at Colliers, and he was obviously a client of Colliers. Such a great guy, so friendly, and also a thinker and very respectful. You know, I think that's one of the great things about him. He's certainly a gentleman.
Cbus have done some incredible developments in the Melbourne CBD. That really continue to push the boundaries. The Collins Arch is an unbelievable project being delivered in a full city block, one of the last few still remaining, and it's just immaculate the way the completion looks. It's changed the entire CBD landscape and Collins Street landscape. And now they just got their permits for the corner of Queen and Burke Street. They're doing a $1 billion mixed-use project. They got that in, I think, just a few months ago. So I'm excited to ask him, has his plans changed? You know, are they going to shift their thinking around that with what's happening? Not to mention their luxury apartments on Spring Street, starting with 35 Spring Street, which hit records and continuously hitting more and more records as they resell. And now they'll launch a 17 Spring Street as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about today, we'll be talking about CBD, because obviously Cbus do have a very much a CBD focus. It is part of the market, as we spoke to Sally Capp a couple of weeks ago about some of the challenges that are being faced by businesses in the area. So, I think that'll be an interesting discussion. And also a really big believer in Melbourne. This is one of the things with Cbus, that a lot of the developments, I mean, they are a national company, they do develop around Australia, but they have been big believers in the future of Melbourne. So will be really interesting to hear his views there.
They're literally designing and creating what Melbourne's going to continue looking like into the future, with their new offices, new retail, new residential towers, hotels, etc. And it's, to understand, how do you plan ahead when something like this happens? And these buildings they're not short term, they're there for decades. And they really create the landscape of a city, state, and a country that people like Adrian, are fortunate enough and privileged enough to have that responsibility. So clearly, he's doing something right after 13 years. Any new TV series this week since we last spoke?
What am I watching? I've watched Umbrella Society. Is that what it's called? Umbrella Academy. I've been watching. It's been pretty good. And a little bit of Homeland. So I've kind of been alternating between those.
Oh, it's a bit old.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I don't know. I think I'm kind of catching up during this COVID period in terms of.
You started from the beginning of Homeland?
Yeah.
Cool. It's very suspenseful. It's like 24. Remember 24?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching 24 on DVDs.
Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching it on DVDs. You had to get the DVDs and lend it between friends, and the DVD was scratched, like rewind it, try it again. Yeah. We've come a long way in the TV.
Oh, we have come such a long way. What are you watching?
I can't find anything. I'm open to suggestions. Really open to suggestions.
Yeah, I'm pretty slow. It takes me ages to get through them. So
Get this, because I can't find anything to watch, I've actually bought and started reading a book. It's called Power Broker.
Good. Well, that is interesting that you're reading his book for a lot of reasons.
One is that we might have him on in the near future as well. But,
that is so exciting.
And a real page turner. It talks about characters, companies, streets, suburbs that everyone I relate to very well, and just a fascinating, never told stories about what happened in Melbourne's business industry behind the scenes from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And geez, that man is well connected and very influential.
Yeah, look, I mean, across not just the business community, but also the political environment, he's incredibly well connected. I have got the book sitting there. I'm going to be reading it before we go into that interview, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and respected. The stories are just phenomenal. And the access to people, prime ministers, politicians, business owners, it's really, really, really like a business thriller. I think you can call that.
Make a movie. Then we can have Carol and Viney and the union blockade in there as well as know.
I'm sure Adrian played a role somewhere.
Adrian, thank you so much for coming today. Today we just want to talk about how you're coping through COVID and all the fun stuff you've been doing while in lockdown. I guess really just kicking off with how you're coping. I mean, you've been at Cbus for 17 years. You've been CEO for 13 years. You've obviously gone through some incredibly tough times during that. How have those challenges you've gone through over the past couple of decades helped you during this COVID period?
Yeah, it's been interesting, Erica. Thanks for that, and thanks for having me on. This has been the toughest, not knowing what's happening tomorrow, let alone what happened yesterday and how it all came about. We've been through GFCs and so forth, and we've got across it because we always knew there was an end in sight. But this one's different. Being stuck in Melbourne, unfortunately, and in lockdown and so forth. Sydney and Brisbane, the guys are working in those two states. It's just the head office is Melbourne and we're stuck. It's just the unknown, the uncertainty of reopening. When is it going to happen?
Adrian, if you manage to secure a social distance lunch with Scott Morrison, Josh Frydenberg, and Daniel Andrews, what would you say or ask them or suggest to all of them based on what's been happening and the performance of all three of these leaders?
Just a happy medium. We'd like to find a happy medium to get business up and running. There've been suggestions. I sit on the Property Council, Divisional Council for Victoria, and there's been suggestions going back left, right and centre about what we can do to stimulate the economy. I'm sitting with the Melbourne City Council and the Lord Mayor in a little group about how we stimulate the CBD. So it's a matter of stimulating the economy business-wise. There's a lot of people hurting out there. We're all in the same boat, unfortunately. But they need to understand that the businesses of this world create the employment, the businesses of this world create the economy and the boom in the economy. And let's get on with it. They're doing a great job. They're in the dark as much as we are, unfortunately. And this is new. This is not a GFC where the office market crashes and it comes back. We just don't know what's happening tomorrow and what the out is in all this. So we've just got to create an atmosphere in a community and a business to get back moving.
Talking a little bit more about office, I mean, you guys are obviously big believers in the Melbourne market and you have been for a very long time. One really big project that has been approved is 435 Burke Street, and it is a $1 billion mixed-use project. It's got 59,000 square metres of office going to be included. Has your view on how that project will proceed changed, or has the strategy changed since the mid-March, the initial mid-March lockdown?
435 is an interesting opportunity. Floor plates around the 1,500 square metres. They're the biggest floor plates, and then as we go up the tower, they come down to about 1,200, which is not a real Melbourne thing. Melbourne sits on, 15 to 2,000 square metre floor plates. So finding the pre-commit is going to be an issue post-COVID because we are in the dark, as I said, and we're trying to work out what tenants want, and tenants are trying to work out what they need and how much space they need. We're positive though. We're in the market looking for a pre-commit at the moment. So we've got to work out, we just put also submission in for 205 North Quay, a planning submission. And that's put in the next generation of office. We put in a potential swimming pool, potential common facilities, and not just gyms and so forth. We'll have medicos in there, wellness centres and whatever else. So we're just looking at what we can do with 435 at the moment to make it more attractive to the future tenant. And the future tenant has to work out how much space they need over the next, I'd say, 6, 12, 18 months, because this working from home will suit probably every business. It's just a matter of, is it going to be a day a week or 2 days a week? Or is it going to be 5 days a week? But based on the last 5 weeks in Melbourne, if people can sit there and say they can work from home full time, I'd go, I just don't see it happening. So we're pretty confident with the office market coming back. It's just timing.
When those tenants do come back, will they spend more time in the office for the days that they're there or less time? Like, will you still go back to 10, 12-hour days?
We've got 40 people in our Melbourne office, which is small compared to the rest. But I'd say 39 or 95% of them are champing at the bit to get back.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of task-orientated work, because they want that social interaction with their employees. And it's just the water cooler talk that you're missing out on. You can do as many Zooms as you want, and you can have everyone on the screen looking at each other. But once that Zoom's off, it's gone. So no one's eavesdropping on what people are talking about around the water cooler, but it just gives people ideas of what's going on with the business. And it just gives people comfort. So yes, we'll have people working from home, but I'd say that maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Does that mean we'll have less space? I don't think so. I think we'll have to redistribute the space and redistribute how the workstations work, and whether, flexibility is the right way. Hot desking won't be the go for a long while, I'd suggest. So there's all those things that are still up in the air that people sit there and say, what is the office look like in 12, 18 months?
Adrian, you're the CEO of Cbus with over $5 billion under management. What are some of the most challenging and rewarding parts of your job? And having this role for 13 years, what's next for you?
Another 13, I hope. That's a very good question. The good part about any development, as you guys would know, is you can see your product getting built. You can see your product getting finished. It is finished, and then you see the commercial tenders coming through, and thinking the wow factor is just incredible. And the residential owners, you sit there and say, this is my new home. You see your finished product and you sit there and say, you're actually creating something for the city, or be it Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, or whatever else. The excitement's always there. It's pretty tough during it, of course, because you always come across all the issues and whatever else in development, which is supposedly easily sorted. But the finished product is what keeps you going. And just knowing the pride that you take in finishing that project, and things like Collins Arch and 1 William Street in Brisbane, it's the tallest commercial office tower in Brisbane. 75,000 square metres of government personnel going through there. You take some pride. And I think that's what the positive is, being owned by Cbus and the construction industry, because the guys sit there and say, we've actually built this. And you've probably seen the commercials. It's not all a sales pitch, because they do take pride. They do take pride. No, the good part about it is you see that ad and you see 1 William Street up there, and you think, it's not bad. It looks all right, that little tower there. So, yeah, it takes, they all take pride of place. So that's the positive. And I don't know, this could, another 30, 40 years of this would be good, mate. Then we'll see the next generation of office town. I can't tell you what that could be.
The challenging part of it? What would the most challenging part of that be?
Challenging part of it, it's just like everything. You sit there and look at your pre-commits, your pre-sales. You've got to have the confidence that, you go through all the planning stages, and that could take 12, 18 months, depending where you are. It could take 2 or 3 years, and then you sit and say, have my pre-sales now gone? Has the market shot itself in the foot? So you've got all those juggling acts to put through. Then you come through the construction, and if you guys know construction, everything goes so smoothly on a construction site and on the construction job. So you've got those challenges, but then the end product, you forget all that. You forget all that once you see the end product. But everyone's facing the same sort of challenges in whatever business they work in. It's all the unknowns and all you weigh it up, risk, reward, and you sit there and say, it's worth it. It is worth it.
Which project is closest to your heart, Adrian? Obviously, you've done some amazing, iconic projects. Which is your number one in terms of?
I can't say the one I live in, can I?
Yeah.
You live in one
I
of your
live in
buildings?
35 Smith Street, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So we took a risk. We were still young back then, 3 years ago, I thought. So we thought we'd buy it as an investment and potentially move in the city post-retirement. But when you saw the finished product, we just said we're getting out of the burbs and we're coming into town. And it never looked back. It's a tower of 246 apartments and you don't see anybody in them. It's incredible. So the concept of living in apartments, you sit there and wave it because you're still young and you think a lot of old people or the young people live in apartments, but they don't. It's an incredible community. And does it take pride of place? I should say yes, but I think our first one took pride of place, which was 8 Exhibition Street. That was the first development. And it still sits there as an icon in the sky of the CBD, even though we don't own it now, we unsold it. But that was the biggest challenge, just the first one.
That was a challenging one with the heritage on the bottom.
Yeah, and the heritage were apartments, and back in 2003, who knew where apartments, city living apartments were going to go?
Yeah.
So it was, that's the one that stands out, and you can see from across the Yarra and whatever else as you're driving into town. So that's the one.
Where's your local grocery shop?
Either, I'm going to give bloody Sam a plug here. Either Vic Gardens or Collingwood.
All right.
Collingwood or Smith Street.
Oh yeah, Smith Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give Sam a plug. He just charges too much for parking. Tell him. No.
Well, he's watching this, so I think you just told him.
No, parking's free at the moment. Tell him it's okay.
It's working well. In terms of your favourite sector, Adrian, I mean, what is it? Is it office? I mean, you said you don't have a lot of retail. I mean, residential. What is your number one sector? I mean, we all have one. So what's your
I think we're sticking to our knitting. Even through strategy and so forth, which is commercial and residential apartments. We still believe in residential apartment towers, even though everyone seems to be wanting to, in Melbourne anyway, I don't know what's happening in New South and Queensland, but everyone seems to be wanting to go back to homes with backyards and so forth. I still believe that's a passing phase. So the demand for apartments, and again, subject to price and so forth, will remain. And commercial's been in our, commercial, as I said, 8X was our first one back in 2002. At this point in time, unless there's a strategic shift in the next, I'd say, 24, 36 months, we'll just stick to what we know best and what we do best. Sorry, we believe this is an opportune time to find some development sites.
So would you buy development sites in the Melbourne CBD today?
Absolutely.
Cbus property typically have institutional partners in some of their projects, but they do have partners, most notably ISPT. Would Cbus property ever consider partnering up, or have you ever partnered up with private families?
If there's an opportunity, make our members some money, we'll look at any opportunity. Absolutely. It's got to be sensible though.
Adrian, obviously Melbourne CBD, no one's shopping there at the moment. A massive retail precinct, such a great place to shop in normal circumstances. What are your views in terms of kick-starting retail in the Melbourne CBD post-lockdown?
I think we've got to sort out public transport and people being confident to get on a tram or a train or a bus to get into town. You can only give so much free parking out, but that's not how people get into town. As I said before, we've gone, they told us that 900,000 people a day attend the CBD, of which 400,000 is they're non-workers, so people used to come into town by those public transport means because car parking was too expensive. So we've got to give those external people the confidence to come into town. That's the first thing. Getting them here is the most critical aspect of shopping in town. And once they get here, the floodgates will open. So things like, I think in Brisbane, for example, they're providing free coffee at destinations at the other end of their bus trips and so forth to get people into town, be they workers or shoppers.
So, Adrian, we've all been in lockdown in Melbourne on and off since March. If I can ask you, what are some of the good and bad habits you've developed in this period, the ones that you want to kick or keep?
Kick or keep?
Yeah.
I have bad habits. I don't have any good habits. Bad habits is that the computer doesn't get switched off now. It's on 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's connected to both desktop and laptop, and iPad. So you can walk from room to room to have a change of scenery, which is a bad thing. When you're in the office, you can actually switch off and go home. But here it's on all the time, and that's a bad habit. And I keep getting told that, and I think it's getting louder and louder from other family members as we get closer to hopefully unlocking our city. But that's been a real bad habit from really daylight. So instead of 20 hours, it's now 24. So as I said, I've got bad habits, heaps of them. The other bad habit is not getting my hair cut. As never said before, it's never been this long. It's very sad. And I shouldn't say I hate hair, but I hate hair.
Every man in Melbourne feels outgrown and ungroomed.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? You sit there and it annoys you. I don't know how people can have long hair. It actually annoys you.
And you're looking at yourself on Zoom all day, reminding yourself.
And you're looking at yourself on Zoom, and people are looking at you carefully, thinking, "Yeah, what's changed?" Absolutely. Yeah.
I did notice your longer hair, Adrian. That was
there you go. So I'll have that cut. I'll get that cut soon.
Surely there's one good habit that was born out of this. Anything? More exercise?
The good habit is that every now and then I get to actually have dinner with the family. The bad thing about this, though, is that I've got a granddaughter who's going to be 1 in 2 weeks. And if I look at the leaked document, it talks about the 27th of September. Her birthday's on the 26th. So I'm hoping that the leaked document's wrong.
Adrian, for young people in corporate Australia right now, what would your advice be during this period and going into recovery of how to take advantage of the situation, if that's possible?
I think this is the best time for young people to know that there's not always blue sky out there, and to work through it, and not necessarily learn from the elderly people, just understand the business better, because they will have time to understand the business and what are the hurdles. And the hurdles are hurdles that are not only placed on or placed through what happens in the business itself. There are external factors, as has happened now, that do affect businesses. And it's a big learning curve. You know, we've gone through the GFC, the 2000 IT. There was a crash back in, I got stuck, for example, in 89. We were in North Queensland. We had just moved up there. And then the crash happened then to the property industry back in 1991. Came back home from North Queensland, having finished the job, and was made redundant, which was a spanner in the works because we had a 2-year-old baby at the time. It's just it's a great learning curve, because guess what? You always get out of it. There's always a way of getting out of it. Everyone's disheartened. You can't, you've got to acknowledge that, but you've got to pick each other up. And that's why I think you've got to get back to the office in some form, because you need to talk to people, you need to interact, you need to know that everyone else is doing it, not if as bad as you, just, close to as bad as you. We're all in the same boat. And if we're all in it together, that's what creates the culture of the company. And if you can bring young kids along with you and get them to understand what's going on, it's a win. It's a win. So I think I can't say this is a great time, but it's a great time to learn.
Adrian, so Dom and I are going to give you 100 grand. What would you spend it on?
100 grand.
We didn't speak about this.
I'll go on that overseas trip in first class in 6-star hotels. Be a good deposit for an apartment now.
Yeah.
Because there should be some, I won't say cheaper product, but there'd be some good buying.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think there will be, because
off the plan, or is it or build stock?
Well, if the government in Victoria changes their rules on stamp duty, potentially off the plan. But there's some build stuff until we get out of COVID. So I don't think we'll know where the prices are going to hold.
Adrian, what was the best TV series you've managed to watch during ISO? And if you want to say, if you want to even pretend that it was a book, we'll go with that too.
A book. No way, a book. haven't got time for books. No, I've spent a couple of weekends watching Bloodline on Netflix and Ozark.
Oh yeah, I watched a bit of Ozark. Yeah.
So I'm waiting for both those series to finish. They were in seasons 2 and 3 respectively, I think, and they've had to stop because of COVID too. No more filming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've heard
So
that.
it's very disappointing. They left me in the lurch like this, waiting.
Adrian, just a final question. What do you see as the biggest opportunity that's going to come out of COVID?
Just like everything, Nerida, I think it's a restructure of business. It's a restructure of the economy, and we're going to get out of this. I'm positive that we're going to all get out of this bigger and better, because out of every dire situation, there's a positive. There comes a positive. We've just got to re-engineer how we think, and we're currently looking at designs for apartments. So our designs for apartments will probably now have a one-bed will probably have a study, and it'll have to be priced accordingly. The residential apartment towers might need a floor of, call it, co-working arrangements, where there might be little offices somewhere on the floor. In our offices, we're looking at, as I said before, everything from swimming pools, because all of a sudden the office market has now become a 24/7. It's really a home. So you sit there and say, there's no 9 to 5 office anymore. We're talking about not only on construction sites split shifts, we're talking about people coming to work different hours. So how's the amenity going to cater for those people? So the office building will be 24/7. And yes, you used to have a swipe pass to get you in at weekends and so forth, but this is now, it's not a matter of just getting a swipe card and you've got to put on the after hours aircon. We're talking 24/7 operation now. So if people want an hour's break for lunch at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's going to have to be retail there. There's going to have to be food. There might have to be a gym that's open. There might have to be a swimming pool for them to have a rest. There might have to be what we used to call a sick bay. There might be an apartment in one of the floors that lets people have a sleep or a snooze. So all those things are now, you're re-engineering everything to cater for the next generation of what people are wanting, because we're providing a service, be it an apartment, be it a commercial level of space. So what is it that the next generation of commercial office tenant wants? So it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be a win-win for everybody. The world might change. It won't change it dramatically. It's just a different way of thinking.
Before we finish, there's one other question that I thought was a good one we didn't get to ask you is, was there any companies or individuals who stood out to you in the last couple of months when everyone's been stuck at home and distracted with kind of adapting?
Should have bought those shares in Afterpay, shouldn't we?
Oh, should have.
It's
Where
my
were you?
$100,000.
Where were you? We should have had this interview in March.
If you give me that $100,000 back in March, I would have bought $100,000 worth of Afterpay shares. I think everyone's just got on with it, gentlemen. You guys have got on with it. You've set up that has interviews with people. Everyone's sneaking outside the square and trying to work out, how do you get out to the community? How do you tell people what's going on with everyone else's life to give them some form of normality? So no company's really stood out. Everyone's just got on with it because that's what we do. That's what we do as a society. We just get on with it. We go through the pain, we go through the hassle, but we're just beasts that get on with it. We're social beasts that want to get on with it, want to get out, talk to people. I should have taken that 100. Now you've got me thinking about that 100 million Afterpay shares.
Yeah, tech stocks have done incredibly well.
This is not good. Can we go back to about Feb, please?
Just so you know, that 100,000 was a hypothetical, like imaginary. You can't really spend it or invest it, like imaginary.
I reckon that $100,000 would have turned it into about $1 million now.
Oh, if you bought Afterpay or Zip or,
some of those pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anything would have done. Yeah, what's wrong with you guys? Wrong time. Your timing for this interview is no good.
Yeah, terrible. Adrian, thank you so much for coming on today. It was just so good to speak to you, and also so good to hear about your perspective in terms of the cycle and how things can be bad and turn good again. So it was such a pleasure to have you on. So thanks for coming on.